What's up YouTube? How are you doing today? Chana D, your Techno Dad here, and in today's video, I'm going to walk you through connecting your HDMI sources to an AV receiver. We're going to get into it right after the jump. And I'm back. Now if you're new to the channel and you want to learn about 4K, home theater and audio products, and how to set them up properly, you should consider subscribing because I'm here to help. And don't forget to hit that bell so you get notified when I do a live stream and answer your questions or when the next video gets released. Well, now that housekeeping's out of the way, let's get into it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back and continuing on with the home theater basic series. This is a video that was requested by a viewer. His name is Toby. I know there's a couple of Tobys. I don't recall the last name as of shooting this, but this is for you, Toby. Not the other Toby, the one Toby. And here we go. So Toby wanted to know about how to hook up your HDMI sources to an AV receiver. Now, if you're new to the game, you know, it can be a little bit confusing. So let's kind of dive into it, okay? I got an AV receiver and a bunch of sources on the dining room table to show you how to do this. So let's go on up there, check it out. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so here we are on the left-hand side. This AV receiver we're using today is the Denon X6300H. I've had this for just about 2 years now, maybe a little less, and it's been doing great so far. You know, Dolby Atmos is fantastic. Highly recommend it. Links down in the description to the new version, the X6400H. So if you're looking for an 11-channel Atmos receiver, check it out. Above that, we've got the LG UP970, the Sony UBP X700, and an Apple TV 4K. Now on the right hand side at the bottom we have a PS4 Pro, then above that an Xbox One S, and above that an Xbox One X. Now normally you wouldn't have all this redundant equipment, but I had this hanging out in the guest room, so I figured why not use it all in this video and show you exactly how to hook up all these 6 items. Now on the back of this Denon X6300H, we do have 7 HDMI inputs. Now all inputs are 4K HDR compatible, so we don't have to worry about, you know, using specific HDMI inputs, and that is something you have to worry about on the lower end models. Now one thing I want to mention before we get started, you need to make sure you are using a high-speed HDMI cable, okay? This has got to be HDMI 2.0 compatible, and I think it's 18 gigabits per second, so it should be compatible with 4K HDR, 60 frames per second, and all that cool stuff. Now as far as the AV receiver, I'm going to leave HDMI 1 open for the cable / satellite box. We're not using one because my wife happens to be watching TV right now, so I didn't want to unplug that. So we're going to keep HDMI 1 open, so we're going to start off with HDMI 2 and the Sony X700 4K player. So normally you would just plug in HDMI 1 out, and that would go to HDMI 2 in, which on the back of the Denon says DVD, and you're good to go. However, if you have an AV receiver that does not support Dolby Vision, and that's what you want to do, you would take the output from the HDMI 1, that goes up to the TV, and then you take HDMI output 2 and plug that into the corresponding HDMI input on the back of your AVR. In this case, it's HDMI 2 labeled DVD on the back of the Denon. Lucky for me, the Denon does support Dolby Vision pass-through, so we can use one HDMI cable from the X700 to the Denon, and we're good to go. Next, we're going to plug in the LG UP970. We're going to use HDMI out 1 on that and plug that into HDMI 3, which on the back of the Denon is labeled Blu-ray. Now the next input on the Denon is HDMI 4, and it does say game, so let's plug in the PS4 Pro into the Denon under game. Alright, right above that is the Xbox One S, so let's plug that into HDMI 5, which is labeled Media Player. Now don't worry about all of these labels, okay? We can change that later, and I'll show you just a quick example of how to do that. Bottom line is you just want to make sure all HDMI inputs are compatible with 4K 60 and HDR pass-through. and 3D. Make sure they're 3D pass-through just in case, you know, you still have 3D Blu-rays that you want to use and you have a 3D TV, okay? Anyway, let's get back to it. So for Xbox One X, we're gonna use HDMI 6, that's auxiliary 2. And last but not least, we're gonna plug in the Apple TV 4K into HDMI 7, which is labeled CD on the Denon. Now that's pretty much what you gotta do. You take all your HDMI sources and plug it into the AV receiver. Now I know a lot of you are out there that's new to this, and that's why this is called the Home Theater Basics, because it is one of the basic things. And through all the emails and Facebook messages I've been getting, when people are getting into this, they don't realize that the AV receiver is the hub and the brains of your home theater. I made a separate video about that. I'll put a link in the description and a card up top as well for you guys to check that out. Basically, the idea is everything goes into the AV receiver, and the AV receiver puts out two things. Puts out a video signal and an audio signal, okay? So you set your TV to HDMI 1, and then you connect the HDMI output from your receiver to that TV, and you leave the input on HDMI 1 on your TV. Then you change the inputs on your AV receiver. Alright, so let's jump into the Denon menu and check out how we can change the labels so you know what is playing. Instead of DVD, it'll say, you know, Sony X700 or whatever it happens to be for your situation. So let's hit setup, and then we go down to inputs, and then we go down to source rename. Now as you can see here, the sources and my labels are totally different than what we did up on the dining table, and that's because this is how I have everything set up on my Denon. Now I still have the Onkyo to review and the Sony 1080 to review as well, so I actually haven't plugged the Denon back in. It was just sitting in the guest room as well. So this is what I have it set at, and you can just go in and change the label to whatever you like. There doesn't have to be a rhyme or reason on which HDMI goes first. There's no priority for these things. Like I said, in this AV receiver, all HDMI inputs are exactly the same across the board. And changing the names or labels to the HDMI inputs are a piece of cake, no matter which AV receiver company you go with. Didn't that look quick and easy? I thought it was pretty easy. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That's how you connect up all your HDMI sources to one AV receiver. Now remember, don't forget to connect the HDMI output from your AV receiver to your TV. Usually it says ARC by it, ARC, that's audio return channel. If you want to use that, I'll make another video about how to use that as well. But for now, just plug it in. It's pretty much plug and play, and that's pretty much all I have to say. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, that's pretty much it for this video. If you liked it, go ahead and smash that like button. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel using that button in the middle of your screen right there. Once again, my name is Chana D. I'm your Techno Dad, and I'll see you next time.